The call came on a Wednesday evening while I was making dinner. The man on the line was polished and aggressive at the same time. He said he was calling from a collection agency about an outstanding debt of $3,000 and that the matter was being prepared for legal action unless I paid immediately. I said, "What debt?" He named a credit card, an old one I had carried a balance on years ago during a hard stretch after a job loss and had paid off completely in 2021. I said, "That debt was paid off, in full, 3 years ago." He said, "Our records show an outstanding balance of $3,000. If it's not resolved, we'll be moving forward with a lawsuit. I can take a payment over the phone right now to stop that process." I said, "I paid that debt off in 2021. I have the records." He said, "Ma'am, the records I have show it's outstanding. I'd strongly advise you to make a payment today to avoid legal action and additional damage to your credit." His voice had that specific pressure to it. Pay now. Pay today. Over the phone. Avoid the lawsuit. Avoid the credit damage. Everything aimed at getting me to pull out a card before I could think. I did not pull out a card. I said, "Do not call me again until you've sent me written validation of this debt. I'll be putting that request in writing." He started to push back. I hung up, because I knew 2 things. I knew I had paid that debt off in 2021, and I had the proof. And I knew that debt collectors are governed by a federal law with real teeth, a law that gave me specific rights and gave him specific obligations he was already violating. I sat down at my table. I pulled up my records, and I started writing the letter that would end this. My name is Jasmine Powell. I am 29 years old, and I work as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm in Atlanta. I keep records for a living, other people's finances, reconciled to the dollar, documented, filed, retrievable. And I keep my own the same way, because the habit does not switch off when I leave the office. When I paid off that credit card in 2021, the one from the hard stretch after I lost a job, I did not just make the final payment and move on. I saved the confirmation of the payment. I saved the statement showing a 0 balance. And a few weeks later, when the creditor sent a letter confirming the account was paid in full and closed, I saved that too. I keep that kind of thing. A paid-in-full letter is not something you throw away. It is the proof that a chapter is closed. So when a collector called demanding $3,000 for that exact debt, threatening a lawsuit, pressuring me to pay over the phone immediately, I was not afraid, and I was not confused. I was annoyed, and I was certain, because I had the paid-in-full letter in a folder 20 feet from where I was standing. I also knew something most people targeted by aggressive collectors do not know. There is a federal law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and the collector on the phone had already broken several of its rules in a single 2-minute call. I knew the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the FDCPA, because in my line of work it comes up, and because I had read it carefully once and never forgotten what it gives you. The first thing, you have the right to debt validation. When a collector contacts you, you can demand, in writing, that they validate the debt, prove that it is real, that the amount is correct, and that you actually owe it to them. Until they validate it, they are required to stop collection efforts. A collector who keeps pushing for payment without validating the debt is violating the law. The second thing, collectors cannot make false or misleading statements or threats. Threatening a lawsuit they may have no intention or ability to file, misrepresenting the status of a debt, claiming you owe something you do not. These are violations. Telling me I owed $3,000 on a debt that was paid in full in 2021 was a false representation of the debt. The third thing, and this is critical, debts have a statute of limitations. After a certain number of years, which varies by state, a debt becomes time-barred, meaning a collector can no longer sue you to collect it. Even if a debt were still owed, threatening a lawsuit on a debt past the statute of limitations is itself a potential violation. My debt was not just time-barred, it was paid, but the threat of a lawsuit was suspect on multiple levels. The fourth thing, there is also a phenomenon called zombie debt. Old debts, sometimes already paid, sometimes past the statute of limitations, get bought and sold by collection agencies for pennies, and the new owner tries to collect on them, hoping the person will just pay. Sometimes they are debts that were genuinely paid years ago, resurrected by a buyer who has incomplete records and is counting on the person not having proof. I had proof. I had the paid in full letter, the final payment confirmation, and the zero balance statement. So I had everything. The debt was paid. I could prove it. The collector had already violated the FDCPA by pressuring payment without validation and by misrepresenting the debt. And I had the right to demand validation and to make them stop. I wrote the letter. I sent it certified mail, return receipt requested, because under the FDCPA, the documented written request is what triggers their legal obligations and creates a record. My letter said, "This letter is in response to a phone call I received on date from your agency regarding an alleged debt of $3,000 associated with account. I am disputing this debt in its entirety." It said, "Under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, I am requesting validation of this debt. I require documentation that this debt is valid, that the amount is accurate, and that your agency has the legal right to collect it. Until you provide such validation, you are required to cease all collection activity." It said, "For your records, this debt was paid in full in 2021. I have enclosed copies of the final payment confirmation, the statement reflecting a zero balance, and the letter from the original creditor confirming the account was paid in full and closed. This debt does not exist. It was satisfied 3 years ago." It said, "I am further noting that during the phone call on date, your representative pressured me to make immediate payment and threatened legal action without first validating the debt and misrepresented the status of a debt that has been paid in full. These are violations of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act." It said, "I am directing you to cease all contact with me regarding this matter, except to confirm in writing that this debt is closed and that you will cease collection. Should collection efforts continue on a debt that has been paid in full, or should you furnish information about this debt to any credit reporting agency, I will file complaints with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Georgia Attorney General, and I will pursue the remedies available to me under the FDCPA, which include statutory damages." I attached the paid in full letter, the payment confirmation, and the zero balance statement. I sent it certified mail and kept the receipt. I did not hear from the collector by phone again. 11 days later, I received a letter from the collection agency. It was short. It stated that, upon review of the documentation I had provided, the account had been verified as paid in full and was being closed in their system. It stated that they would cease all collection activity and would not be reporting the debt to any credit reporting agency. The debt was dead, again. Confirmed in writing this time by the very agency that had threatened to sue me over it. I did 2 more things, because I keep records and I close loops. First, I pulled my credit reports from all 3 bureaus to make sure the zombie debt had not been reported by the collector while they were chasing me. It had not appeared, but I checked, because a collector reporting a paid debt as outstanding is exactly the kind of thing that damages a credit score, and I wanted to confirm my report was clean. It was. Second, I filed a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau about the agency's conduct, the threat of a lawsuit, and the demand for immediate payment on a paid-in-full debt without validation. I did this not because I needed anything more for myself. My matter was resolved. I did it because an agency that called me and pressured me to pay $3,000 on a debt I had paid off 3 years ago was calling other people too. And most of those people would not have a paid-in-full letter in a folder 20 feet away. Some of them would just pay. The entire business model of zombie debt depends on people just paying. I kept the agency's closure letter in the same folder as the original paid-in-full letter from 2021. 2 letters, 3 years apart, both confirming the same thing. The debt was paid. It stayed paid. And this time, I had it in writing twice. I am 29 years old, and a debt collector threatened to sue me for $3,000 over a debt I had paid off in 2021, and I shut it down completely because I had kept the proof and I knew my rights. The first thing, Keep your paid-in-full documentation forever. When you pay off a debt, a credit card, a loan, anything, save the proof, the final payment confirmation, the statement showing a zero balance, and especially any letter from the creditor confirming the account is paid in full and closed. Keep these permanently, not for a year or two. Paid debts get sold and resold and resurrected years later by collectors who are counting on you no longer having proof. The paid-in-full letter from 2021 is what ended a collection attempt in 2024. The second thing, never pay a collector on the phone under pressure. Demand validation in writing. A collector who calls demanding immediate payment, threatening a lawsuit, pressuring you to pay over the phone right now, that pressure is the tactic. Under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, you have the right to demand written validation of any debt, and until they validate it, they must stop collecting. Never give a card number to a collector on a pressure call. Say you are requesting validation in writing, and send that request by certified mail. The validation request shifts the burden to them to prove the debt is real, the amount is right, and they have the right to collect it. For a paid or fake debt, they cannot. The third thing, know that the FDCPA protects you and that violations have consequences. Collectors cannot make false statements, cannot misrepresent a debt status, cannot threaten lawsuits they cannot legally file, and must honor a written request to cease contact. When a collector violates these rules, and the one who called me violated several in one call, you can file complaints with the CFPB, the FTC, and your state attorney general, and the FDCPA provides for statutory damages. Naming the law and the regulators in my letter is part of what ended it. A collector chasing a zombie debt does not want a documented FDCPA paper trail. Keep your paid-in-full proof. Demand validation in writing. Know the FDCPA. The debt was paid in 2021. It stayed paid. And now I have 2 letters that say so. Hi everyone, thank you for being here. Tell me in the comments, has a collector ever come after you for a debt you already paid, or one that wasn't even yours? Did you have the proof, and what did you do? I read every single one. If this story reached you today, subscribe. New story every day. Jasmine Powell, Atlanta, Georgia.